Welcome to the Anderson and Lindhardt Show. This is episode 25. Today, Carter and I talk about public speaking. Combined, Carter and I have done well over 150 public speaking events, so this is a topic we are very excited to talk about. We discuss what got us interested in it and what tools we have implemented to improve our public speaking. Thank you so much for listening, and God bless y'all.
We wanted to talk about today for episode 25, kind of our experiences a little bit with public speaking and being able to talk and interact with a group of people, or being able to just speak in front of people, because it's something that I don't know if you've always loved it, because it definitely hasn't been something I've always loved. But it's something that now, obviously, we have a podcast. We like to talk in front of people, but it's something that's one of our biggest passions and biggest desires to be able to continue to do. And so we kind of wanted to walk you through how that kind of came about, but also being able to kind of help you understand maybe some ways that you can implement, just little techniques or little skills to be able to be the best charismatic, confident speaker in front of groups of people, so that when those opportunities come, like especially being just a member of the church, like you're teaching Sunday school, or you give a talk in sacrament meeting, or you're teaching primary, these opportunities just come all the time, especially for members of the church, or like for you just in work. And so wanted to be able to help people, because we feel like we have a unique perspective, but we also it's just something that we love. And so we're going to kind of just give you our backgrounds and hopefully be able to help you learn a little bit about public speaking.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for this because there's so many, it's weird. I've talked about sales a little bit before on the podcast, and I'm like, I kind of have this love-hate relationship with sales, but I do realize sales is a necessary part for any business. So I'm trying to consult any resentment I have towards it and be like, hey, there's no use in being resentful towards sales, because I want to be an entrepreneur. And if I don't like sales, then that dream can just be thrown in the trash, because you got to sell. Right. But I really have appreciated my sales experiences, because it's taught me how to be more charismatic, how to build rapport quickly, how to hold the grasp, how to hold someone's attention better. So these type of skills, and if you use those for good things, and in this case, in this context, we're going to be talking about public speaking, they could be really powerful. But anyways, I growing up, I never was like, oh, I want to be a public speaker. And I would give talks in church, and I would get nervous, but I wouldn't get petrified. Like some people get petrified.
I was petrified.
Really? Yeah, no. So I was nervous. Don't get me wrong. My heart rate would be going fast. I would just be reading the paper and kind of I was nervous a lot, but I was never petrified. It wasn't the end of the world. I was like, I can do this. This is fine. So, but it wasn't oh, I can't wait to get up in front of, 300, 400 people and read this talk. And then I think when I really, because personally, I believe one of my natural talents has been public speaking. And I'm not saying that I'm the best off the bat. There's certain parts of public speaking that come naturally for me. And over the years, I've been able to learn new skills to how better that talent, if that makes sense. Just get better at it. But my farewell talk as a missionary, so the talk I gave before I went on my mission in church, I had the grasp of the whole room, and I was just being me giving my talk. And that was kind of one of the main glimpses where I was like, whoa, that was kind of cool how I captured 300 people's attention and I kept it for 15 minutes. That felt kind of cool. And actually also in high school, I had a sociology class, and for the last, I think there was 40 kids for the last 40 days of the school year, as our senior year, every kid got a whole class hour to themselves to discuss a social issue. So you can imagine how many little kids, little 17-year-olds got up there and preached on their little soapbox about, social issues, how they think this country's all corrupt and stuff. But anyways, I had a chance to do that, and my mom helped me, and I talked about mental illness and just how with the rise of Western medicine, everyone flocks to pills as their first go-to. And I made it clear, I was like, look, I'm not against pills and everything, but I think a lot less people need them, and there's all these natural ways that humans have used for thousands of years that we need to get back to. And that was kind of what it was about. And I was freaking nervous to do that because it's like your classmates. Like I was
Yeah.
less nervous to speak in church with all the old ladies sitting in the front row, but I sat down and it was another experience where I was like, I captured the attention of 39 of my classmates who are like too cool for school, but like I caught their attention and I held it for 45 minutes. And then, so those two were like where I kind of got the glimpse. And then we got on the mission, so I went on a mission at the very end of 2017 is when I left. So I actually got to my mission in 2018, early 2018, and didn't have like a lot of opportunities to public speak. I'm trying to think like when it kind of hit me. I guess I started listening to a ton of self-help tapes and whatnot. And I started having these images of myself public speaking and training, really, but more so public speaking. I just love public speaking where I can grasp people's attention and hold it for an hour or more. Like that was just so fascinating to me that I could do that from those two previous experiences I had. So it definitely, those two experiences planted the seed, and it was something I definitely thought about. So when I started learning all this cool stuff about psychology and health and nutrition and fitness and stuff, I would have these images of myself public speaking. And then I started making myself have those on purpose by doing something called priming, which Tony Robbins talks about. And I don't know if I want to get into that right now. It's pretty simple though. It's pretty much just you do a breathing exercise, and it's actually weird. You put your hands above your head and you breathe through your nose, and you just go like and you do that like 30 times, and you do that 3 sets. So 3 sets of 30 of like this, and you're breathing, you're like pulling your intention in, and you're breathing through your nose. And what it does is it just kind of makes you feel your body, like it kind of charges your body up. So it throws you into the present moment. And then you get into a meditative state from there. It's actually really easy to focus when you're in tune with your body. You can kind of quiet your mind, lower your brain waves. We've talked about this a little bit before. And then when you're in that state of mind, you can visualize. And so I started doing this when I was in Harker's Island. So this is the very end of 2018, very beginning of 2019. I started doing this every morning for like 10 minutes. And the main thing I would visualize, and I would always end my visualization meditation with this, I would visualize myself public speaking about stuff that you and I talk about on the podcast. Mm-hmm. And I would visualize myself looking out into the crowd, and I would visualize faces in detail. And I'll never forget this one time I was just visualizing this crowd, and it literally, if you get into this deep state, which every day I didn't, some days the meditation kind of sucked and I just kind of did it. But some days I would get so deep in it, so immersed inside this meditation that the colors were so bright. My eyes are closed and everything looked so real, and the emotions felt so real. And that's what you're aiming for. And I was looking across the crowd, and there was this really overweight woman on the front row. And we were at this part of my public speak that I was visualizing where I had this beautiful music playing in the background, and everybody had just gotten done doing the meditation with me, and we were just all standing up, like with our hands up, like soaking up the energy or holding your heart. And this lady like looked me in the eyes, like bawling with a smile on her face, because she felt hope, like she could break through. She was, the overweight aspect of her was just the surface of all the hurt and like feelings she's felt her whole life and stuff. And so that felt so real. Like I recall that as if it actually happened. Like I just recalled that with like the same emotional intensity as if that actually happened, because I feel like it actually did happen, because it was such a strong visualization.
Well, it's going to happen one day.
Yeah. And like, I still believe that. I still hold on to that image. I've revisualized that image over and over. Obviously I have, because I can recall it so well. I can hear the music in the background. I can see the lights. I can see how many people. There's like 3,000 people. And this lady's wearing a red shirt. She has blonde hair. and she's bawling her eyes out with a huge smile on her face because she feels so hopeful. And I started visualizing myself doing these public speeches and training people. And I started getting so excited about it. Like I would just finish these meditations and just be like, holy cow, like that's what I want to do with my life. I want to public speak and I want to train people. And then I want to meet with the ones who are more serious on one-on-one later. But like public speaking is awesome. And so you mentioned before we started recording, maybe bringing up just touching on the law of attraction just a bit. So this is where the law of attraction comes in, because at this point in my mission, I was just kind of a average missionary for the first year of my mission. And at this point in my mission, I was working a lot of my personal growth, and I was doing these visualizations of me public speaking every day. Well, after 3 months of literally doing that every day, I'd miss a few days here and there, obviously, but pretty much every day, I got a call from the mission president on transfer, the day where they call for transfers. And if the mission president calls you, you're going up into a leadership position. And I was not expecting him to call me. I was just expecting it to be the assistants being like, hey, Elder Lindhardt, you're going to this new area.
You were training Elder Davis at this point.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'm training Elder Davis. I haven't held any leadership like official leadership positions up to this point other than trainer. And he said, you're going to go be a zone leader with Elder Wilkinson in Virginia Beach. And then so I'm starting to think, okay, well, what are the assistants doing right now? And we're getting closer to this mission merge where Richmond's going to merge into my mission, and we're going to have their APs be with our APs. And I was like, and Elder Thornock's going to be going home at that exact time, and they're going to need a missionary who can, overlap that, bridge that gap. And so I started thinking like, dang, like that would be crazy. But I honestly didn't really think it would be me. But I remember that night I got to Virginia Beach, Elder Wilkinson was like, Elder Lindhardt, you're the next AP, right? And I was like, nah, dude, like I'm like, dude, I was just training and now I'm just with you. Like I'll probably be in Virginia Beach for 6 months. Turns out, I kept doing those meditations. I kept working out in the morning, and I kept doing the priming meditations. And I hope Elder Gabrilchek listens to this, because he does. I know he's done priming that method before in the past. But anyways, then 4 weeks later, I was only in Virginia Beach for 4 weeks. So it just started happening really fast. I just went from this like mediocre missionary in Hampton to starting to work on my personal growth, to starting to meditate and do these visualizations. And then just like boom, 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 boom. Like all of a sudden I went from just a normal trainer to a zone leader just for a month, and then boom, to an assistant. And like Carter and I, just for anybody who has served a mission and, knows all the AP jokes, like all those jokes aside, like honestly, like being an assistant was a unique experience, and everyone's mission is unique. I would never want to take away from the experiences you had, but there's just different things you do as an assistant that you don't do as a normal missionary. I mean, for example, when President and Sister Drew Bay first came to the mission, in 2 days, we did 4 meetings across the whole state of Virginia,
I got pulled over.
Carter got pulled over because our registration was expired. We were all like kind of zonked out. Carter's like, I'm getting pulled over.
I'm like, guys, I'm getting pulled over. Everyone's like, what?
We're like, we were listening to John, by the way's talk.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what? But anyway, so everything started happening so quickly. And it's one thing that you do as an assistant, at least with President Drew Bay, and I think President Smith did the same thing, and President Weed did the same thing. So I'm assuming a lot of mission presidents have their assistants do this, but we would train at the zone conferences. And so every 6 weeks, there was 4 zone conferences, and the average number of people at the zone conference, it kind of varied because some zones were smaller, but the average amount of people at zone conference was probably 60, 50?
Yeah. 50 to 75 probably.
Yeah. Like the bigger ones like Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, there was probably closer to 75, 80, but and then some of the smaller ones, probably 50. So, a good group of people. I mean, like you said before, like you imagine 50 people come in your house, that'd be a ton. You'd be like, holy crap. And so we had an opportunity for those 4 zone conferences every single 6-week period to give a training at them. And our trainings were usually an hour long. And we didn't personally, I had assistants at the beginning of my mission who were great, but their training sucked. They were so boring. They had no charisma. They sucked at grabbing my attention, and it's not their fault. They're doing the best they knew how.
Right.
But
You're,
they
I mean,
just,
you're just like 19, 20-year-old kid trying to
yeah.
do that. Not everyone, it's not
And it
everyone's
was way
talent.
out of their comfort zone. So I'm not taking away from them, but I'm just saying, like, honestly, they were so boring. And I remember when I got made the assistant and knew I was going to be training, I was like, I need to make these trainings entertaining and fun, and I need to grasp these these missionaries' attention, and then hold it for the whole hour so that they can
Yeah.
actually get something out of it. And Carter and I, this is kind of where our journey started, because I had, I think, three or one, two, I think four zone conferences I got to
I
train
think we
at
were both
before.
called in April, and then
Yeah.
we
So we had a
got
few on our
combined,
own,
and yeah.
and then the missions merged and Carter and I became companions. And then we started doing the trainings. And that was, yeah, four. Cause in Chesapeake, we only had 3 a week, or
Mhm.
3 zone conferences per 6 week period per transfer. But in Richmond, it was bigger. So we had 4. And so we got to train 4 times per 6 week period. And so it was our responsibility to come up with the whole training, make it interactive, make it so that they can get something out of it and take something with them. And Carter and I, we just started learning, and I was already learning some skills with public speaking and stuff. And so we were able to collaborate, both of our ideas. And that's kind of where the journey started. So that's like, I hope I kept that pretty concise, but yeah, that's where,
Yeah.
like, and after 9 months of giving several trainings in big groups for, like that amount of time, like I was just hooked. And so now being home, like, and not being able to public speak since I've been home, I taught 2 Sunday school classes when I got home from a mission in the ward I was in. And then I moved to Virginia and COVID was crazy. So it's like, man, I miss it. Like, so that's my experience with it. And so, yeah, what's kind of your journey with it? I know the mission, obviously, when you and I started going, that's when but um, was it ever a thought in your mind? Did you have any experiences when you were in high school or around that age, or was it just kind of the mission? And then you were like, this is kind of cool.
Yeah, I wanted to say one thing on your thing. I think some
Okay.
people might think that just, he's like, oh, Reese was visualizing being an assistant. And I just want to like
Oh,
clarify. I know that
no,
wasn't
no,
your
no.
intention. And some people might think that like, oh,
Yeah.
like as a missionary, you think about giving trainings and stuff, like you just want to be the AP. And it's like, that's not what your intention was. Your intention was,
No.
that's what you were thinking, more like future, like
Yeah.
business, like career stuff. And so
No,
like it
yeah.
wasn't like a self-righteous, like, I'm going to do all this self-help to be an AP. Like that's not what it
Exactly.
was.
No,
It
I
just
was,
comes with the growth.
yeah, I was 100% focusing on like what I wanted to do with my life. And these public speeches I was giving were about deep personal growth topics, and they were to groups of people, and I was 25 years old in these visualizations, but the principle was I was public speaking. And so that was just one way that visualization manifested into the world, and it was completely unexpected. Like, trust me, anyone who knows me from the beginning of my mission, like, dude, I just was not expecting to get a call like that at all, nor was I aspiring to get there. It just happened, God needed me and he needed you. Like, he needs certain people at certain times. And if you're prepared, then he calls you. And so it was completely unexpected. But yeah, I was definitely not like visualizing that to happen. I was just trying to be the best person I could.
Right. Yeah, no. But so going back to my experience, I remember the first time I ever gave a talk in church. So like I was a deacon and I'm passing the sacrament, and I was so nervous. I was crying the whole time I was passing the sacrament. And so people are like, "Oh my gosh, like dude, this 12-year-old is like so in tune with the spirit. Like he's just feeling the spirit passing the sacrament." Nope. He's just nervous to go up and speak. So I'm like crying as I'm passing the sacrament, and then I walk up onto the stand, and like it's kind of frustrating because my family, like, were really like spiritual criers, especially my dad. Like there were times, he's the bishop now, but he's always like been in the bishopric. Like for me growing up, there were times he'd like be doing announcements for like sacrament meeting and tear up like while he's doing the announcements. So like that just kind of shows like kind
It's
of
like my
where
dad too.
it's like, oh my gosh, dad, like, come on. Like, you're just like so embarrassed. Anyways, but like that when you mature a little bit, you realize how cool it is. But like so that was just kind of like, I think I was really nervous because I knew that was going to happen, just because like every time I had public spoken before, it was in a church setting, and you feel the spirit, and that was just kind of the way it manifested it. And so I think for a while I was really nervous to get up and public speak because I didn't want to cry in front of a bunch of people.
I see.
And so I would say like it's pretty similar to yours. Like I didn't love it, but I was like, all right, like if I have to do it, like I'll do it. I didn't really have many opportunities in school to do that outside of like maybe a PowerPoint like on the book you read or whatever, but that's not
Mm-hmm.
like that's 2 minutes and you just click the PowerPoint. But I would say kind of the first time I really enjoyed public speaking was my farewell talk, pretty similar to you.
Yeah.
Um because I remember like I went to my friend's farewell talk and he like went he captured my attention for the whole 15 minutes, probably for one of the first times ever in a sacrament meeting. And I remember being like, I want to be able to do that. It was more so on like a spiritual side. Like you could just feel the passion and connection he had with Heavenly Father. And I was like, I want to be able to do that. And so I remember like preparing my farewell talk. And I just remember I loved every time I gave a talk telling stories and
Mm.
like relate, because like I don't, like you said, like not with the assistance from my mission, but just like people will give up and talk and they give the most boring stories, or like just not like, just like what is this
And
going
they're
on.
just throwing loads of information at you, and information and no stories to illustrate it. And you're just like, oh my gosh.
And so like I was just like, I want to be different. Like I, this is bad, but I was like coming up with like jokes for more of it. Like at the beginning, I was like, I gotta come up with like good jokes and stuff like that. Just
Yeah.
because I wanted it, like you listen to Hank Smith, like that. I think that he's probably my biggest like reason why I want to do what I want to do, is because just how much good he's been able to do.
And we,
Um,
you and I, we modeled
our trainings
our
after him.
trainings after Hank Smith a lot of the times, and the ones that we did, they were killer. Like everyone
Yeah.
was rolling, laughing, but by the end, they were ready to go to work. Like, yeah, that man is great at what he does.
And so one of the quotes he says at the very, he sets expectations with his crowd, which is a skill that could go into. But he talks about how he's like, I believe that laughter is not a hindrance to learning. And so I apply that into every single time I public speak. And I think that laughter is not a hindrance to being able to feel the Spirit either. I
Yeah,
think that goes
true,
hand in
true.
hand. And so I try, I remember that talk, like I think it was on how to become truly converted. And so I really wanted it to be unique. And so I talked a lot about like how I love the Rocky movies. Like
Oh yeah.
I cry every time I watch them just because they're so inspirational. But I just remember like kind of giving the examples of like how Rocky's journey kind of can relate to our spiritual journey, of how there's opposition and there's setbacks, but you have to push through. And so, anyways, I just kind of like modeled my talk after that and sharing personal experiences and relating it to scriptures and stuff. And I just remember like it just goes by so fast, and afterwards you're kind of like, I wish I had more things to say. And when I like said amen and was like kind of sad to say amen, I was like, oh dang, I like kind of enjoyed that. Like that was kind of
Mm.
fun. Obviously, like I was crying like the whole time, but like that was a different thing. And so then like I went on my mission, and kind of didn't really have too many opportunities to do that. Kind of like you said, probably about until like a year out into my mission, when you started like doing district leader trainings, or you'd be asked to give trainings in district meeting, whatever it might be.
Oh yeah. I just butt in a
Yeah,
little
go
bit.
ahead.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that's when it really started to kick off for me, was when I was in Hampton. I gave a lot of trainings and district meeting, and that was, I think there was probably one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. We had a small district. There was seven of us, but it was fun. So I'd get up in front of six dudes, and yeah, we didn't have any sisters. It was like pure elders for a long time, which was good times. But yeah, I
It's
would give
good and bad.
trainings. Yeah, we goofed around a lot, but I would give trainings, and that's when I really started to be like, this is sick. Like I'm getting up here, and I was teaching these guys stuff that you and I are about to talk about: body language, tone of voice, word placement, how to end your sentence, things like this. Started teaching them this stuff, and it was so fun. And I was like, this is awesome. And that's why I really started visualizing myself public speaking, because I was like, this is what I want to do. Like when people started asking me, what do you want to do with your life? And I'm like, I want to start a personal growth company where I public speak like all around the world. Like that would be so amazing. So, anyways, just wanted
Yeah.
to hit that. You reminded me.
So I would have like those experiences, and I don't think I had any, crazy, experiences where I was like, this is what I want to do kind of deal. And I don't think it was really until we became companions that, 'cause I mean, obviously, like I loved being able to train. Like it was like, when you stand up in front of, a whole two or three zones, like I just loved being able to. Elder Van Leuven didn't like it, but I loved making jokes, and he was kind of like, "Come on, man!" Like, anyway, so it was like obviously our training style was a little bit different, but I think that it was needed at that time, especially for the missionaries that we were working with. Anyways, and so like when we became companions, we both had very similar views
Like we would
on
joke
how to
around a lot.
train, and so I think that we both kind of were able to catch the vision of what this really can look like. And so I think for me, I remember like honestly when it was like when President Sister Drew Bay would be closing their training and we were up next, like it felt like I was about to go play a basketball game.
It
Like
felt,
I was
yeah,
like
it was like
I was like
pre-game,
getting
like
like
let's go.
and like get
Yeah.
up and you're like getting hyped, and it was like then I kind of vividly remember, I think it was my birthday 2 years ago, and we were in Newport News, at the what's that building?
Denby Steak Center.
Yes, we're there. It's my birthday. I'm feeling good, and I just remember being like visually just being like kind of doing like the getting hyped to go up and train. And so I think then I kind of recognized how much I really enjoyed this, and then for the rest of my mission being able to do so. And I came home and just was like, obviously we had talked about wanting to be able to start this, and so it's something that was on both of our minds. But I wanted to, also be able to have opportunities to continue to do it and to continue to work on my craft. And so I remember like very early on from being home, I put a picture on my vision board. It wasn't necessarily on my vision board all the time, but it was in my vision goals sheet or whatever.
Yeah.
But I put a picture of Bronco Mendenhall because I love sports and I love being able to use sports as an avenue to help people connect with Jesus and God and stuff like that. And so I wanted to be able to, kind of use that as like because he would come and do speaking in Virginia, and he brought like I don't even know how many people were there that one day in Richmond where he had his seminar, but I just thought that was like the coolest thing ever. Like he's up there public speaking to a group of like 100 to maybe like 300 people there in a stake center, just talking to them about his faith because he was the football coach of the University of Virginia. Anyway, so I remember that moment being like, that's kind of what I want to be able to do. So I put a picture of him speaking at a church in front of people up on my vision board. And probably like 6 months later, the opportunity presented itself to be able to become a seminary teacher. And so, I obviously was like super excited for the opportunity. It's almost like a zone conference every time I get up and train. I don't have a companion, so I don't really like that because I'm kind of uh, pressed to come up with all the jokes. So sometimes they're not very good. But
Yeah.
so I just like that opportunity came, and so it was kind of interesting. Like you had the law of attraction was very vivid in your thoughts and things that you were thinking about, and then an opportunity presented itself. And for me, wasn't so much a thought process as was like kind of like a goal and
Mm-hmm.
an aim, and that was what kind of presented itself as the opportunity for me to continue to do that. And so for probably like since last October, I've probably had the opportunity to 5 times a week for 80 minutes be able to get up there and public speak in front of my class and be able to share with them the things that are important to me. And I just love it. Obviously it's hard sometimes because it's 80 minutes long. Like that's a long
Yeah,
class
that is a
sometimes.
long time. Wow.
But being able to do that and connect with the kids and being able to be up there and try and inspire them and be different is something that I'm just so passionate about, and I love having the opportunity to be able to do. So that's kind of like my my background with it was like something like I went from a 12-year-old crying because he didn't want to have to speak in church
Yeah.
to wanting this to become my career. And like you said, I feel like it's one of my spiritual gifts is being able to be confident in front of people and being able to portray and share my thoughts in ways that maybe other people aren't able to. So it's something I don't feel like I'm the best at it, but it's something that comes
Yeah,
natural
same.
to me.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been my background. So I don't know kind of I would ask you, what are some of the techniques that you started to implement where you saw it start to become fun for you? Because I think a
Yeah.
lot of people don't think it's fun, but it honestly is so much fun when you're like really doing it. So I would ask like even if it's like, even if it has no effect on your audience, if you're public speaking, it should be an enjoyable experience to some extent. So I'm wondering for you, kind of what changed to have it start becoming a fun experience for you, enjoyable, something that started, a passion for you.
Yeah. So I was thinking like, because there's so many skills you can start to learn and develop down the road once you start to get like the basis of being a public speaker. So I was like, well, what is the basis? And I think one of the number one things it starts with is body language. So I started learning about body language years ago, like in high school, middle school rather. My mom started teaching me about body language. But I didn't really take it seriously. When you're a middle schooler, high schooler, the cool thing is to not really listen to everything your mom tells you. So I was like, eh. But I like never wanted to fully admit it, but I definitely was super interested in it. I thought it was cool how you can literally change what chemicals and hormones are released from your body by the way you stand. I was like, what? This is crazy. Like this is real stuff. And so that's when I started implementing some of these body language tools. And one of the main things the body language started doing for me would calm me down. And so when you're up there public speaking and your heart's going a million miles an hour and you're super stressed out, guess what happens when you're stressed? Blood goes away from your brain. So now it's harder to think. So now you're going to start stumbling over your words. Now, when somebody asks you a question on the fly, you're not going to come up with a very good answer, on and on and on. And so if you can calm down your brain, get more blood flow to your brain, now you're in a calm state. I would always get the heart rate going up before every single, and I guarantee I still will, before every single public speaking event. It was like, oh man, here we go. But it was more excited, some fun nerves. But 5 minutes into the training, my heart rate was right back down to normal. And it's because I was standing up straight on both of my feet, and my tailbone, this is important, my tailbone wasn't tucked in. When your pelvis is tilted in, it's like, think of a dog who's scared or sad, he tucks his tail in. We have that tailbone, and we do the same thing. We tuck in our pelvis and our tails, and that sends a signal to the brain that you're in danger and you need to curl up. And when you're like that, there's confidence. You can just kiss confidence goodbye if you're standing like that. So one thing Tony Robbins, a visualization activity he likes to do that helps illustrate this, is if I said to you, there's a depressed person in this is weird. I'll just say, I was going to say in my closet, but I don't want to. Why do you have a person tied up in your closet? Okay. But it's like, if I said there's a depressed person out in my hallway out here in my house, they're super depressed. How are they standing? And I ask you that, and I'll give you $1 million if you can guess how they're standing. How would you say they're standing?
Like this, like sad, head down, shoulders down.
Yeah,
back
shoulders.
down.
Exactly. Head down. They're looking down at the ground. Their chin's down. They're probably not smiling. Their shoulders, like you said, are forward and down. Their tailbone is going to be tucked in, and they're going to be talking like this. Like if I asked you how you're talking, you'd probably be like, "Oh, they'd probably be talking kind of slow and like, oh." And
Like
so,
Eeyore,
yeah,
the
like Eeyore.
yeah.
Boom. Think of Eeyore. And so, you know, people. Tony Robbins says, he's like, I'll have people come up to me and they'll be like, Tony, I just don't know why. Like, just feel so sad all the time. Like, I don't know what it is. And he's like, maybe you shouldn't stand like this and talk like this every day. They're like, what do you mean? And he's like, maybe you should put your shoulders back, untuck your tailbone, put your chin up and smile and talk a little bit faster with more confidence, and then see how you feel. And so it really started with body language, was like key. You have to have good body language if you want to be a good presenter, because if somebody's up on stage and they're standing all like Eeyore, you're like, who is this guy? Like, I'm not gonna watch him. Yeah, this guy's boring.
Even if they have the best information in the
Yeah.
whole world, you automatically like, and it sounds bad, and I try and get rid of this thought, especially at church, but like when people get up and are like that, I'm just like, you almost just zone out, because you're like, they aren't confident in what they're sharing, so why would I like take something to learn? Like,
Yeah,
it's
and
just hard because they don't look confident in it.
it naturally, it's a natural human reaction. So it's like if someone's up there and they're talking all slow and they're saying and like and all these filler words every other word, you're gonna lose interest so fast. And if you to keep your interest and your attention, you're gonna have to like fight so hard to keep listening to them because you're like, this is so boring. But so body language was huge for me because I would get up there, and if I stood confident and calm, that sent a signal to my brain that said, oh, we're safe right now. We can lower the nerves down. We can take the adrenaline out. We don't have to have the adrenaline anymore. And so, you know, when you have adrenaline, it lasts for a little bit. So about 5 to 10 minutes into the training, the adrenaline's worn off, the nerves are gone, and the brain, I'm thinking, boom, boom, boom. I'm thinking good. Like if somebody asks me a question, the thoughts of like, oh, so many people are looking at me, I have to come up with a question. None of those were there. It was like, oh, let me think about that for a sec. And so um, body language and what builds off that is confidence. So you mentioned that at the beginning. Confidence is huge because, again, you're not going to want to listen to somebody who's not confident. It's boring. It's just boring if they're not confident. And so confidence is built off of, because confidence isn't, it's not just had, like you're not just born with confidence. It's not just lucky that people are confident. It's stuff you do. It's how you stand, it's how you talk, and it's how your voice sounds. And so that leads us to the next thing, is how your voice sounds. Because if somebody's talking very monotone the whole time, you're going to get really bored because it's just the same tone over and over and over and over, and you're just going to lose interest so quickly. On the contrary, if someone's talking with wild pitches, you're going to get annoyed so bad. But this is a huge skill I learned in sales very early on. One of the first things I was taught, and it's your tone of voice. Because I've shown you this chart before, but imagine a pie chart. So this pie chart represents the 3 branches of communication. That's body language, tone or pitch of voice, and words. Most people will, if I say what's the most important out of those 3 communication aspects, and most people will say words or tone. Completely wrong. Body language holds over about 50 to 60% of the pie. So a huge percentage. And then your tone of voice holds about 30 to,
I mean, you just
32.
look at texting, and that's why it can be a problem if that's your main source of communication with someone, because all of a sudden, I think you said like 50 and 30%, right?
About 50, a little bit more actually, and then about 30 to 35 is tone. And then about 5 to 7% is your words.
So you're trying to communicate with someone with 5 to 7% of, you know, all that needs to go into having effective communication. Obviously, like texting is good, but
and emojis
I just, like,
help.
That's what comes to my mind of like, that's probably why we have a lot of problems in society.
A lot of miscommunications.
Miscommunications is because you're not being able to express yourself in maybe the way that you want to, or that you're trying to come across because you're texting. That's just a thought that I'm learning right now. That's interesting.
Yeah, and emojis help. I'm a type of
I
dude,
love emojis. People that don't use emojis, I'm like, just don't even text me. Like, just
yeah, emojis are sick, bro. And like they genuinely help. Like utilize emojis. So they're funny, they're silly, but they actually help. Like it's funny. They can actually help the emotion, you know, they can help show what emotion you're feeling. So emojis actually help, which is hilarious, but they really do. Anyways, for example, with my sales job, I was kind of having a slump. My boss was like, hey, just listen to some of the other guys, just go listen to some of their calls, just see what they're saying, and I'll follow up with you in 2 weeks. And so I did. I didn't like go up to them and be like, hey, can I sit by you and listen? I would just take my headset off some days, not call for 30 minutes, and just listen around there, because we sit so close to each other, so I can hear their calls. And I started really realizing very, very quickly, and I already knew this, but this was just added evidence. I was like, they're saying, the words they're using are either they're completely different than mine, first off, than the ones I was using, but they're not that good. One of my coworkers, he like trips up on his words all the time. And he's always tripping up on his words and stuff, but he's one of the highest performers in our team. Typically is the highest. He's in the top 3 almost every week, but he's always jumbling his words up. And so my boss, this was last week, my boss was like, so did you listen to some of their calls? I was like, yeah, I did. And here's what I realized. This is something I already knew, but their words don't matter, dude. I was like, so-and-so, for example, he's over here tripping on every other one of his words, but he's selling people like crazy. And I'm like, and it's because of how he's saying it. Because on the phones, you don't get that big chunk of the pie with body language.
Right.
But body language is still
tone
important.
takes over more.
Yeah, your tone is going to Yeah, but body language is still important because body language can affect your tone. Because if I'm sitting like this, it's actually going to be, I'm going to have to fight my physiology to to keep talking confidently. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll try to remember when I'm in with my sales job, I'll still try to sit confidently, even though they can't see my body. It's going to come out through my tone. It's going to make it easier. But I was like, dude, it's their tone. It's their tone. I already knew that, but now I really, really know it even more. It's 100% their tone. And so this is what I wanted to get at. One of the main things you can start with tone is when you finish your sentences, unless it's a question, obviously, go on a down pitch. So I just barely did it there. Go on a down pitch. But if I say go on a down pitch, go on a down pitch, like it just sounds so dumb. Or so I'm trying to think like if I'm selling you the like pest control right now, and I'm like, I knock on your door. Hey man, sorry to bother you. So my truck is gonna be here this actually tomorrow, and if I can get your house done, then it'll be really cheap. So do you want some of my pest control? I sound like a freaking little kid, and you're like, dude, get off my porch. But if I'm like, hey man, sorry to bother you. So I do the pest controls from your neighbors. My truck's gonna be here tomorrow. I got slots for 3 or 5. Does 5 o'clock work for you? It just sounds so much better. And so I started implementing these tone things, and started making a world of a difference. And so ending on a down note, and then excuse me, just pausing. It's like just pause and let it sink into the audience. Too many people are afraid of silence. So that would lead us into the next thing,
Yeah.
silence. Don't be afraid of silence. Do you have any thoughts on either what we just talked about, or I want to hear your thoughts on silence? Because I know you and I talked about this and we utilized it a lot. We would have silent moments in the zone conference just to let our words sink into the audience.
Yeah, I think just the only thing I would add to what you had talked about with tone and body language that you touched on, but that I've found so important, and it was really hard during COVID, but being able to smile while you're training is so like I remember like I don't even remember who told me it, but it's like I would be like going and knocking on doors as a missionary, and you'd just be like, "Hey, we're missionaries from the church." They're like, "You're not, dude. You don't even look like you're happy to be doing this. Like, why would they want to listen to you if you're not even smiling?" And so like I just remember like I have to conscious because like obviously like sometimes I'll probably even do it here where I'll just be talking. I'll be very serious and very engaged, but it probably looks like I'm not having a very good time because I'm not smiling.
Yeah.
And so that's something that I've had to try and work on. Is probably a good reminder for me now. Um, Especially going into this next year teaching seminary where we're not going to be having to wear masks while we're teaching, but just like to be smiling. And then it's weird. You actually start to have a better time when you're doing it. Even if you're doing the exact same thing that you normally would have been doing, when you're smiling while you're doing it, you start to enjoy it better. And so even if you're faking it for a little bit, being like, hey, like just trying to like be a little bit more positive,
Yeah.
like it starts to become more natural and people will want to listen to you more when you're smiling. So that was probably just I just remember like that made a huge impact on probably my effectiveness, but also my enjoyment of being able to go out and public speak. And obviously kids could tell under my mask, like you can kind of tell when someone's smiling. So I tried to do my best,
Yeah.
but I think it
Eyes, man. Eyes are the window to the soul. You can
shout out
tell.
to Elder Holland, I think said that. Or maybe other people have said that.
Yeah,
But
it's old poetry. Elder Holland is an English major though, so he quotes poetry a lot. So I'm sure.
he probably just came up with it. So no, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding. But with silence, I think that's something that people that's something you have to be really confident to be able to pull off because you almost have to then show your trust in the audience at that moment. And you have to be confident that they're going to take that time to be able to get what you're trying to get. Like you're putting a lot of trust in them, and that takes confidence. And so for me, um, that goes back into preparation is if you've prepared and if you've done your part, you can be confident in allowing silence. And that I don't really have a ton to say. I feel like what you're going to have to say about silence is probably going to be a lot more, and if I have any thoughts on it, I'll kind of chime in. But I just think that silence, it takes confidence to be able to pull off, but when you're able to pull it off, it almost like just it just shoots your effectiveness through the roof of what you're able to do, because it allows the person time to think about what they are trying to take away out of this. So that's all I would say, is it's super important, super hard to pull off, but if you can, it's like money. So
Yeah. And another thing with one thing I need to talk about with silence is how words are important, because with the pie chart that I explained, I don't want that to take away from the words. I mean, 5 to 10% is still 5 to 10% of communication. They matter, but they just don't matter nearly as much as the other two. But still, your words matter. So this isn't an invitation just to go say random words or poorly thought out sentences with just a good tone. Like, it'll actually still sound better than you think, but words are still important. And so that's where silence, i I really started to enjoy learning how to use silence to my benefit. And before I get into it, so just visualize silence. I'm putting it on a shelf. We're going to get back to it, because one thing I want to talk about right now is using the audience as your gauge of how well you're doing as a public speaker. So number one, I this was a skill I learned from Kirk Duncan, who's a public speaker, and I taught this to you, and I know you and I started utilizing this, and this was make eye contact with people, with one person at a time, and do it for 3 to 10 seconds. Kind of feel it out. If it's somebody who's not afraid of eye contact, you can go a little bit longer, but I would say probably 3 to 6 seconds is kind of that sweet spot. And you don't want to go, so if for those who are watching on YouTube, um, you'll see what I'm doing. But if you're not, I'm going to be swiveling my head from left and then all the way jerking it to the right. So some people, when they're public speaking, they'll look at Sammy Joe over here on the left, da 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 da, and they're making good eye contact. And then they'll go to their next sentence and they'll look over here at Bob on the right, da 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 da, and then they'll look at Don over here in the left middle, and so now they're jerking their head around like this, and they start to look distracting. So what you want to do is look at this person for 3 to 5, 6 seconds, whatever, make some good, solid eye contact. And you're talking to that person in that moment. You're not talking to the crowd anymore. The crowd is non existent anymore. I'm talking to you. And then I'm talking to this person. And then when I feel like I've had a sufficient amount of eye contact with them, then I'll move on to the person who's 1, 2, 3, 4 people away from them. And then 1, 2, 3, 4 people away from them. And I'll make it all the way across the room. And that's going to fill up a lot of time. If I'm spending 5 seconds on each person and I'm looking at 30 people across the room, now I get to the right side. Now I start over. And so now I'm going to be in this motion like this, where I'm talking my points, I'm going over them. I'm looking at one person at a time. And it's so much better than side to side to side. And so eye contact was huge. And another reason why it's huge is because you start to get a feel for how you're doing. So if not a lot of people, if I'm looking around the room and not a lot of people are looking at me, if they're writing notes, that's different. But if I can tell that they're just kind of distracted and out of it, then I know, oh, dang, I lost their interest.
There's something you need to change.
Yeah, I got to switch something up. And then also, but another good indicator to know if you have their attention is silence. And if I say a sentence that's powerful and I just shut up after I say it, and it goes dead quiet and all eyes on me or all eyes on their notebook writing down, then I know I have their attention and I just made an impact. And so with the zone conferences, for example, for those who don't know what a zone conference is, I'm assuming most people are members of the church who listen to this right now. But what it is, it's just all the missionaries get together. Well, not all, but there's different zones, which is just different boundaries. All the missionaries within that region get together for how long? 7 hours, maybe, with a lunch. 4. Yeah. So it's just a day of training. And so there's different trainings. There's a big lunch break. Then there's different trainings. And one of the trainings was us. And so we would be in the gym or chapel, and you got X amount of people sitting there, like we said, 50 to 80. And we're up there training. A lot of times we would have a PowerPoint with some graphics and things like that. But silence was huge for knowing if we have their attention or not. Because if we could say a powerful statement that has the right words, we say it in the right way, and we deliver it standing the correct way, and we say it powerfully, and we just stop and let it sink in. Whoa, everyone's quiet. We got their attention. And now the reason I wanted to bring up the importance of words is because if it gets silent and we let it be silent, and then I break the silence with this. Um, so yeah, like I was saying, it's like, okay, you just ruined the silence. But if I say, I'm trying to think of an example, if I just go straight into the next thing without saying any filler words to break the silence, it's okay to just break the silence. We're afraid to just break it. We think we have to crawl out of it with these filler words. So like I was saying, dot dot dot. Now I've kind of broken the silence. Like, no, just break it. If you have their attention, just break the silence. It's going to come off so powerful if you do that. That's
Can I
something I
say
try to
something?
do. Yeah.
I think like when you show like when you say something and you allow time for silence, I think that the audience is then like, oh, okay, this is something important that I need to remember. And so like it's almost like a technique that you can use if you really want your audience to get something, then it's like, I'm gonna say something and stop. Like, okay, I would really want you to like understand what I was saying. Cause it's kind of like, if you're just saying a bunch of stuff over and over and over and over, and you're not really giving time to stop and give them time to think about it, it's almost like if everything is important, nothing is important. And so when you give them that opportunity to like, when you say like, I love you, and you just like give them time to like think about that, then it's going to be like, that was really important, instead of saying I love you and then also I was talking about like we got a deal going on, and so it's just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it almost brushes over that important thing. And so I think, just like as I was listening to you kind of say it, is like, oh, okay, like it kind of clicked in my mind. When you allow for silence, it helps the audience, because like obviously the audience isn't always on the same page as you, but allowing you to do that almost gives them an opportunity to like in that moment get back on the same page with you. So I thought that was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think you and I utilized silence well in the podcast we did about the book I read, Man's Search for Meaning. There was a lot of points in that podcast where we allowed silence to be there because it's important topics. And if you would have said a powerful statement that needed, a couple seconds to reflect on, and say you said that and then you stop and it's silent, and then I get all uncomfortable and I say, yeah, so like, it's like, dude, it was going good.
Right.
And so you just have to trust the process with silence and start honestly experimenting with it. I almost said play around with it, but I think experiment is a better word for that. Experiment with it and see how you can use it to your benefit, and not just to yours, but to the benefit of the person you're talking to or the group of people you're talking to, because it can really help. Like I want to kind of give an example. Like I'll read a cool quote. My mom just sent me a quote and said, she sent me a quote and I said, I need to put that on my workout story. And she said, that's what I was thinking. That's why she sent it to me. So this was literally just 2 hours ago. She said, so she sent me this quote that says, if we wait until we're ready, we'll be waiting for the rest of our lives. And so if I just read that quote and keep going on, so yeah, like the quote says, but if I say, if we wait until we're ready, we'll be waiting for the rest of our lives. It's like, dang, son, like that is way more
Yeah.
powerful, and you feel it. It's boom, right in the chest. Dang. But if I just say, yeah, if we wait till we're ready, we'll be waiting for the rest of our lives. And then, so yeah, like the quote says, you just got to keep going. You got to keep getting your goal. And you're like, wait, what? Hold on. I think that was a cool quote, but now he's already 4 sentences ahead and I don't remember
And
what
if
it
they're
said.
taking notes, they don't have time to write down their
Exactly.
notes.
Exactly. Oh, I wanted to write that quote down, but now he's already, and now they're just thinking about what was that quote? What was that quote? And now they're ignoring everything you're saying right now because they're trying to remember what that quote was or what that principle was. Um, awesome. So I think that's good for there. The next thing I wanted to talk about, and I want you to kind of give your thoughts on it first, is storytelling. Touched on it, but storytelling is really big, and we tried to utilize that a lot, and I think we
Yeah.
did so pretty well. And I know we got better at storytelling. So how has storytelling improved your public speaking?
It's it's crazy because I feel like that's something that might be, I think that and silence is probably my weak not my weaknesses, but stuff that I can continue to improve on, just because it's like, I think if you're able to tell stories well, that's like the biggest separator of a good public speaker and in an average one, because you look at Hank Smith and he goes on like 20-minute stories, and it's just like you are so engaged the entire time. Like there's not you're just, it's like it's literally a movie playing in your head. And it's like, so for me, like now I'm realizing that's something I want to work on for this upcoming year, is being able to really work on my storytelling, because I don't know if I allow myself the opportunity to really do it a whole lot in my classes. And I think that that's where kids are going to learn a lot. That's where kids are going to be able to feel and be able to relate to me a lot better. And so that's something I definitely want to continue to improve on. But like, I just, you go to Hank Smith and you're just like, man, like this guy's storytelling ability is amazing. Or you even like go to Elder Holland and his ability to turn the scriptures into stories, amazing. And that's
Oh,
why people love
incredible.
listening to him, because he
Yeah.
turns the scriptures into a story. He doesn't turn it into, I'm going to read verses 1, 2, and 3 and then ask you what you think about it. I'm going to tell you a story about how the apostles, came back to fishing and whatever. Like I just think that story of
Mm,
him telling about the, like, why are we back on the same seashore having the same conversation, like that is probably the most amazing um scripture story turned into a story of all time. Like that is just amazingly told, spiritual. Anyway, so I just think like it allows you the opportunity to, number one, not that all public speaking is about entertainment, but it allows you to entertain in a way that also allows your audience to be able to learn. And I think like when you're able to do that, it's fun to tell stories. Like I don't know about you, but I have a good time telling stories. And I think my last thing that comes to my mind was when we asked Elder Haney, just like we were asking him about, kind of public speaking tips and like kind of how he worked on trainings and stuff. And he was like, I was with President Nelson. They were like, I don't even know what they were doing. They were just, I'm sure it was like a mission tour or stake tour or whatever it might be. And he kind of asked President Nelson like what his technique was on giving trainings in public speaking. And he was like, I'll teach him a principle or I'll teach him a doctrine, and then I'll tell a story. And when I feel like they're kind of losing attention, or no, so he'll teach a principle and a doctrine, and when he felt like they were kind of losing interest or not really super engaged, then he would tell a story that would relate to that. And then when he kind of told that story, he'd go back to teaching the principle. When they kind of got bored and disengaged, then he would tell a story. And so I think stories have the ability to engage your audience in a way that nothing else has. And so for me, that's been kind of, I remember like hearing that and understanding like, wow, okay, the prophet is implementing this technique of public speaking. It's something I should probably take seriously. So that's my, it's, I think that you're a lot better at it. Hence like you probably tell a lot more stories than me in the podcast. But I think like um I just remember like there would be multiple times in even our missionary trainings where you would, tell a story and it was like, wow, that was like really well told. So I think that's definitely something that I want to continue to improve on.
mhm.
But yeah, those are my kind of thoughts, is that it just allows you to be able to engage your audience in really a very unique way that nothing else really can.
Yeah, 100% agree. And yeah, it's always something, all these skills we're talking about are things that I'm always trying to improve upon and get better at, especially with storytelling, because there's some people who are just so gifted at storytelling, and you're it's just eyes on them and you just can't wait for what they're going to say next. And I'm just talking about in casual settings.
Right.
I have a coworker. He'll start telling us stories. He's like, oh guys, last week, and it's like, oh what, okay, I gotta like put everything down and listen because this is gonna be funny and entertaining, and just good. And so I try to, when I meet people like that and I hear them tell stories, I try to just copy them. Seriously, just be a
Hmm.
copycat and like, how did they say it? So when they're telling the story, okay, how are they saying this? And a lot of times they use silence, or they set up mini cliffhangers. And see, people are doing this naturally. This is
Right.
something I have to typically think about and get good at. But they'll set up mini cliffhangers and then leave you guessing for 2 seconds. Then you're like, oh, what happened next? I was wanting to maybe give an example. I
You
feel
could
kind of,
just tell it. You could just tell a
yeah,
story.
yeah. I feel kind of like this is kind of like,
Maybe we
uh,
could
uh,
both just tell like a quick story and kind of show like how we kind of do it,
yeah,
so that you could like kind of just see like, because I think I definitely tell it a little bit differently than you. So maybe we could kind of give them examples of
Yeah,
kind
I
of
was I was thinking that would be kind of fun to showcase kind of what we've practiced. And I'm a little rusty because, like I've said, I haven't
right.
really given a public speech for a long time.
Maybe no,
But
I was gonna say we tell the same story, but that'd be kind of boring. So
yeah,
then
that would
no.
be kind of boring. But I was thinking I could either tell a personal story that happened to me or that turkey story. Do you remember this turkey story I told in one of those Zone
I think you could
conferences?
do the turkey story.
Yeah. So
Unless you
okay,
really feel inspired to do a personal story.
no, this is the story I was thinking about telling. So this was a story that I heard through a public speaker for the church, actually, John, by the way. He opened this up with one of his talks, with one of his speeches. And so I thought, man, I'll just copy that and I'll say it how he said it because he had me, and I'll add a little bit of, my flair into it. But I opened up several Zone conferences like this, and as soon as I finished the story, you just see everyone just like, that was amazing. And and so the story goes something like this. So imagine we're at a personal growth seminar, and there's 2 days that are upcoming. This is the first speech. I come out there, I'm like, everybody, welcome, so glad to have you here. So before we begin, I just want to get into this little story. It's actually a true story, believe it or not. It's actually up on my grandpa's farm. My grandpa's from Idaho. This is a true story. He had a turkey farm up there, and none of the turkeys could fly, so they would just walk around. They would go, roost at night, but during the day they'd just be walking around and eating bugs and doing what turkeys do. Anyways, one time, I swear, again, this is a true story. My grandpa told this to me. The turkeys one day were just walking around, and they saw a turkey flying above them, just up in the sky, soaring around, kind of like a hawk would. And for anyone who knows turkeys, they can fly a little bit. They can fly up into a tree and fly down, but they're not really birds that are up there soaring. And so this happened 2-3 days in a row, and some of the turkeys were like, who is that? They're so free. We gotta know who that is, because I forgot to mention they were in an enclosure. They were fenced in, so they only knew this little space. And so one day, one of the turkeys called this flying turkey down and said, hey, we really want you to teach us how to fly, how to be free. It's so amazing that you can do this. So the flying turkey said, all right, here's the deal. Meet here tomorrow at 4 p.m. We're going to have a little get together, a little seminar. All right. And everyone said, okay, yeah, sounds good. So the turkey flies off, goes away. Anyways, next day comes around. It's 4 o'clock. All the turkeys are gathered there. They're ready. The flying turkey swoops in and, all right, everybody, I'm going to teach you how to fly today. It's going to be awesome. And so the flying turkey starts showing them the basics. And by the end of the night, all the turkeys are flying. They're soaring over the hills. They're way past the fence. They're seeing, wow, we've lived by these hills all this time. It's so beautiful. It's the beautiful sunset. They're soaring around, having a great time. They feel so free. And all the turkeys that had learned how to fly that day, they come in to go to bed. They land, they go to bed. Or rather, they land, they meet together again. They're like, that was so awesome. We were flying, we were soaring. I'm so glad we learned this skill. And then they all walked home. And so, I kind of was a little choppy, but the moral of the story obviously is that you're going to come here, you're going to come to this Zone conference or to this training, or you're going to hear this church talk or this lesson, and you're going to learn skills that will allow you to fly and be free. So don't walk home. And yeah, opening up with that story was the best. And I would utilize silence masterfully right there, because I would say, elders and sisters, don't walk home. Don't walk home. And just let it sink in. And everyone's like kind of giggling but when you say that, it's like, boom, yeah, I don't want to walk home. But I've just said, yeah, don't walk home. So what we're going to get into today is pretty good information. We're pretty excited about it. It's like, whoa, dude, hold up. And so, yeah, like I said, I haven't told that story in a long time, so I couldn't remember all the details, but that's kind of a decent example of how you kind of want it to sound. So the tone of voice, I was ending on down pitches a lot. Obviously there's times where you end on up pitches if it's a question, or if it's a character being silly, but you have a confident tone. You're ending on these low pitches, and you're utilizing silence. You're minimizing filler words. Filler words get really, once you hear somebody saying a lot, you naturally just start counting. Oh, dang, that's 12, 13, 14 times. That's only two sentences for 16. And then that's all you're thinking about the whole time. And you're just trying, don't think about the ums, just listen to their talk. I'm sure they have good information to share.
And then they say it
Yes.
again, and you're like, oh.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, like I was saying, like last week, and you're like, okay, yeah, yep, this is done. I'm just gonna start keeping a tally, and you just start tallying it on your notebook. So, anyways, that's a fun story. Maybe one day, I'll tell it again, do a little bit of a better job. But it's just a fun example, something
Right.
like that you can use. So that's one of the things I like to do is I start using charisma by saying, by the way, this is a true story. Like, guys, I'm not kidding. You can even ask my grandpa. I mean, he's dead now, but when you see him in the afterlife, ask him. This is a true story. See, like you can use some funny jokes, be a little humorous. Obviously, they know it's not a true story, especially when I get into it. But I
did that one
set it up.
time in my seminary class. I like told him a makeup story. And then at the very end, I told him, like, guys, like, I'm just kidding. They were so mad at me for telling a fake story. They were like, we were so engaged in Sarah's experience, and then you tell us it's not even real. And so
You're like, yeah, gotcha. That was the point.
Yeah,
No,
pranked. And so then they didn't want to listen to any of my stories going forward. So I tried to like find real stories, but I just thought it was funny. Like, cause I agree. I think it's fun. Like John, by the way, and Hank Smith, like when they tell their stories, you like, no, you're like, there's no way this like actually happened, but they're telling it like an actual story.
It's like a parable.
Right.
Yeah. And so when I use that line, this is a true story, it's when I'm telling an absurd cartoonish story that is not true. And it's a stupid joke, but it's funny. If I'm like, guys, I swear on my life, this is true. There's a group of turkeys, they can't fly, they learn how to fly. And they're like, okay, this isn't true, but he had me and this is funny. So that's an example of just a parable, I guess you could say. That's not an actual experience. Are you thinking about sharing an actual experience?
No, for me, the thing just to practice, because I'm teaching seminary tomorrow. I it's super quick, and it's just like for me really important, but I like to try and create the chapters that I go over into a little bit of a story so that they know what we're talking about a little bit into context. So I was just pulling up my lesson plan
Cool.
for tomorrow. But let me just review it like in 2 seconds. But um so today, class, elders and sisters, whatever it might be, brothers and sisters.
It's just me.
It's just all of our millions of fans. But today we're going to be talking about.
Wait, hold on. Isn't that weird to think? Like right now it's just me, but later it's going to be several more people. Who knows how many more people?
Yeah, millions.
Probably close to billion, but whatever.
Yeah, no, probably like everyone in the whole world. But
yeah, actually, that's probably true.
So today we're going to be talking about Doctrine and Covenants 81 and 82. And in this, it's Joseph Smith calling, let me get his name right. He calls Frederick G. Williams to be a counselor in the high priesthood. And so at the time in the church at this time, Joseph Smith, like, it's so interesting because again, I'm working through my words, so this isn't totally perfect.
Yeah.
But at this time period, the church, they didn't have fully organized like high priests and presidencies and all this stuff. And so the first presidency at that time was called the high priesthood, like leadership or council. And so it's very interesting because at the time, so he was called to be, I'm totally butchering this, so this is good for me because I was totally gonna butcher it tomorrow. But
like fail before you do it. Yeah.
But so he gets called to be a high counselor, and the Lord is like, Frederick, man, I have so much in store for you, but you need to be very faithful to me. You need to do what I say, and you need to really support my prophet Joseph Smith. And so in section 81, it's just so much counsel to Frederick of the Lord talking to him about how he needs to be a faithful member. But then it also goes into what happens if he doesn't be a faithful member and he ends up not doing that. He's not faithful in his service. And then as we move into section 82, this one is really interesting because it's actually kind of like we can all relate to it. But it's Sidney Rigdon and the bishop of the church at this time, Edward Partridge. They were in a fight. They're being little girls and they were having a rough time with each other. at this time the church is, moving from Ohio, I think, to Independence, Missouri, I believe. And so there's a lot of contention. Like, it's not an easy thing to do, to move your family and to move the church, to a whole different location. And, obviously the bishop being one of the leaders of the church and Sidney Rigdon being one of the leaders of the church, there's a lot of contention between the two of them. And section 82 is all about the Lord helping us understand forgiveness and understanding the importance of that, but then also going into, once we've been forgiven and we like make restitution with the people in our lives, kind of what comes in store, into our lives as we then start to build our foundation upon good relationships and being able to, implement some of those things. And so for me, that's kind of the end of the story.
Okay,
But
yeah.
so for me, like, I love being able to, obviously, like, maybe I should practice a little bit more because I haven't been teaching uh, a ton during the summer. But when I'm able to do that, it's almost like I invest, 2 to 5 minutes of my lesson time in being able to kind of turn the chapters into a story so that they
Mm-hmm.
know what's going on. And so then it's like, all right, when the Lord tells me, I will forgive whom I will forgive, but unto you it's required to forgive everyone. You're like, oh, okay, like, I can go back to Edward Partridge and Sidney Rigdon. They're fighting, not
Yeah.
liking each other, and then you're able to implement it a little bit more. And so I don't know if maybe that was the best example, but for me, that's probably the one that I use the most right now, is trying to turn scriptures into stories, which is a skill in and of itself. Like, as you can see, it's not like the easiest thing to do.
It's tough and it takes a lot of thought.
Yeah, because you have to really understand the story, and that's
Yeah.
probably where I lack, because I'm not a scriptorian. I just understand the principles pretty good. So that's probably where I need to continue to learn and grow, is understanding, because like, you understand that turkey story, like, even though it had been a really long time,
Yeah, it's
you
been a
understand it
long time since I said that,
and
but
you're able to tell it pretty well, like, obviously not
yeah.
perfect. And so for me, maybe that's like the principle that I'm learning about storytelling, is you have to really have the story down. Like, you
Mm.
can't just say, because a lot of the times, like, in my lesson notes, I'll just be like, tell the story about so and so that you taught on your mission, and then I'll get up there and I'll be telling it, and I'm like, oh, what happened next? And you're not like super confident. And so maybe one of the principles that we can take away from this is when you're storytelling, make sure you have the story down, because like, for you, you could probably, like, maybe Reese's was a good example and Carter's was one that you could improve on, and you could kind of tell
Oh,
the
mine could
difference.
definitely be improved on.
You could tell the difference in, like, obviously, like, I know the story a little bit, but like, I just kind of dived into it today, like maybe an hour or
Yeah.
two ago, and you can kind of tell that as I'm telling the story and stuff like that. But as for you, like, this is something, like you said, like, you heard it like when you were in high school or whatever, and so it's
Hmm.
like something that you've had, you know down for a while, and you can tell the difference
Yeah.
in confidence level. And so for me, that's what I'm learning, is that, when you're telling
Yeah.
stories, you need to know the
Dude,
story.
that's a really good point, and you need to know, and you need to know the story, and you need to know the information like inside and out and backwards and
Right.
front, which, and sometimes, and this will bring up a point I wanted to get into, I guess, kind of to maybe wrap up, because I don't want to like overflow. We could always talk about this stuff again and
Yeah.
again and again because it's so fascinating, but these are kind of like the basis ones. But authenticity is very important. For example, if you are stuttering on a word over and over, then make fun of yourself.
I was gonna say that is huge in public speaking, is being okay with making fun of yourself, because it gets the audience to be like, oh my gosh, he's a person and
Yeah,
he's not
and it
like
just
too cool.
eases the tension. If I'm like, yeah, so the sorry, I can't talk and laugh, or if I'm just like, yeah, so and the people are like, is he gonna break the tension, or is this just gonna be super awkward?
Yeah.
And you're just like, please break the tension, please break the tension. And if he's just like, oh, sorry, I literally like can't talk, I forget how to English sometimes, you're like, oh, lol, this guy's funny.
Hmm.
And then you're listening to him. And like one time I was listening to this Jordan Peterson lecture. He's talking about, it was one of his biblical series. So he's talking about really, really deep stuff. I mean, the scriptures are insane. He can spend 3 hours on 2 verses. Most of his biblical lectures are 2 or 3 verses. Not most, but a lot of them. And one time he was something, he was looking for his water bottle, and then he found it, and he was trying to talk about this deep principle while taking the lid off, and he like couldn't get the lid off, and so he finally kind of like got frustrated, quit talking, and he's like, sorry, like sometimes I forget how to take lids off or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's just funny, if he would have just been like all awkward about it, you're just like, it's a huge turn off to listening to them, and it's, you would rather just stop. And so if making fun of yourself and then just being authentic is really big. And so don't be, if you're thinking, constantly thinking, oh, don't mess up, don't mess this word up, don't mess it, you're going to. So it's like,
Mhm.
just go out there, be yourself. If you trip over a word, if you can't, like you tripping over scrupulosity the other day, you weren't like, oh gosh, like it wasn't awkward because you weren't making it awkward. You were like, sorry, I literally can't say this word, screw
I
loss.
messed it up yet
Yeah.
today.
And it
So
wasn't weird. But if you would have been like just trying to act like it's not happening, then it's
like
like,
avoiding saying it. Like, I
yeah,
mean, I
yeah,
probably did a little bit, but like it's still like you can tell when someone starts to like, you can see a weakness. And obviously, like, this is me and you when we watch people public speak, we're kind of looking for what we can learn and maybe what they could do better. Not
yeah,
everyone
yeah.
is going to be like, oh, that's a huge
They're
weakness
not gonna
in their
analyze it.
public
Yeah.
speaking. But I think when you can tell when there's like a weakness in it and they are afraid to confront that. And so like, because you start to see like they're avoiding, you know, maybe for me it's like my seminary teacher avoids telling scripture stories because he doesn't know them, you know, maybe as well as some of the other teachers, so they can maybe kind of see that portray into your ability to speak.
Yeah. And then it just becomes a distraction. So yeah, just be authentic. Don't be afraid to make fun of yourself. Everyone knows that's like, those are the type of people you like. And by the way, if you're somebody who's getting bullied, start making fun of yourself along with them in a joking fashion, in a playful energy, not a self-hatred energy. But at work yesterday, I was talking about, I don't remember what, but I used the completely wrong word. Like my brain just, I was saying this sentence about this topic I was talking about to like all my coworkers, and so everyone's listening, and I used this word that made no sense, and they were like, I used the word positively, and I can't remember what word I was trying to use, but it had no relation to positively. It was another word that started with a P. And one of my coworkers was like, positively, and I could have been like, oh gosh, but I was
Like,
like,
shut up.
yeah, shut up, you're so mean. But I was just like, what the freak, I said positively, no, that's not what I meant to say. And like,
I meant to say Pringles.
I meant to say Pringles. Or if I'm just like, oh, sorry, dude, yeah, I'm kind of stupid, it's like,
They're
it's
like, oh no, you're
so,
not.
yeah, it's just so much better. And so just learning how to be authentic, and that's charisma.
Mm-hmm.
Learning, making, that's a skill that, and charisma is learned, like
That's something we
charisma.
could talk about for days.
We should talk about charisma one day, because
Make a note.
I was not the most charismatic person, and it's something I've worked on so much. And again, it's the subconscious. You'll learn a new skill, you have to consciously work on it over and over and over, and then eventually it becomes subconscious, and then over and over and over. But charisma is humongous. You look at public speakers who are charismatic, you like them, even if
Right.
they're tripping over the words and they're making fun of themselves. I mean, Hank Smith is the type of dude who, if he can't get a word out of his mouth, if it's a big word,
He makes fun of his name every time. Like,
oh yeah,
just
he's
like,
like, who names their kid Hank? That's a dog name. Like, he'll say
right.
crap like that, and you're like, this is freaking funny. Or like John, by the way, will make tons of jokes about his name. And it's just, yeah, just be fun, be playful. And so that would be charisma. That would be under the umbrella of charisma, but that would be like one of the number one charismatic skills you could learn, is just being authentic. If you're tripping over a word, don't make it awkward for everybody. Look at the audience, be like, guys, sorry, you can make a funny joke, just ease the tension. It's just going to make it so much better. And then they're going to keep listening to you. Because Carter and I, we, in our public speak, in our trainings, bro, we were saying dumb stuff all the time, and we would
Yeah.
just laugh about it. And then when you laugh about it, it gives everybody else permission to laugh about it, and they
Right.
like that. And then they see you as somebody who's like them, and who can laugh about themselves and about their flaws, and then you're going to keep their attention. But if you're beating around the bush with words you can't say, or if you're stuttering, or on the extreme side, if you like almost tripped over something on stage, make a funny joke about it. Be like, what the heck, who put that? I don't know. Just be funny, be charismatic. It's a skill that's learned. But I think see, I don't even know everything we covered, but I was going to try to do an overview. But body language, tone, words, eye contact with the people, utilize silence, make sure you're paying attention to how the audience is reacting, because they're going to tell you if they're interested or not. Because if everyone's fidgeting around and looking around and or having their head down on the pew, sleeping, they got a big line across their forehead when you're done, then you need to change something up. And you can, just and then utilize charisma. And I think those are kind of some of the fundamental public speaking. You got to get those 5 or 6 things down before you can start. Oh, and storytelling, I left that out.
Mhm.
I'm so stupid. I left. But,
How could you forget the biggest one? No.
oh gosh, I'm so dumb.
Oh
Anyways,
my
these 6 or
goodness.
7 things, like start working on these.
Mhm.
And by the way, I wanted to mention one more thing before you want to say any closing thoughts. Public speaking, when we're talking about public speaking, we're talking about teaching your Sunday school class, talking to a group of, talking to your family at a say a family reunion, and you got 7 people and you're telling them a story. How can I keep their attention and be more charismatic? So this isn't just formal public speaking events.
Right.
This is applying to every form of public speaking, even if it's you're at work,
Even
and
if
it's
it's
lunchtime.
1-to-1, like
Yeah. I mean, Carter and I, there's no way we could talk for 2 to 3 hours with each other if we were both boring. It'd be
Right.
like, dude, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Like, I'd rather go play Minecraft or something.
right.
So, anyways, those are my final thoughts. We can always revisit this and get into some of like the branches. I mean, you could take each one of those ones that we talked about: body language, tone, words, storytelling, and we could make a whole podcast about them.
Yeah.
So, anyways,
But-
amen.
Yeah, I would just, again say it's just like for me, it's something that you have to do. Like everyone has to public speak at some point. And so if you've listened to this and you've gotten to this point, just think of like one of those bullet points that you can improve on. Cause I'm sure like as you've been talking, like you've been like, oh, like I can work on this.
Oh,
Like,
for sure.
and so for me, it's like, whether it's, communicating with your mom or your dad, it's like maybe I can have a little bit better body language with them, or I can have a better tone, like whatever it might be. Just think about whatever came to your mind and be like, that's what I want to work on this week. Is like I want to be able to work on having my shoulders back, or I want to be able to work on, not having a monotone voice. That's something that I know that I have a tough time with sometimes, that I need to continue to work on. Whatever it might be, just be like, I want to work on that this week, and just watch the number one, you're going to enjoy being able to communicate with people a whole lot more, but you're going to be able to like, you're going to be better at it. You're going to be better able to communicate with people. You're going to be better able to capture their attention, be charismatic, and then people are going to view you as a very confident person, even if you might not feel that way. And so for me, this is just like a huge way to just continue to boost your confidence, is being able to work on some of these skills. So it's like, it might sound like we're just talking about, going up and speaking to thousands of people. And obviously one day that's what we're going to be doing. But like right now, like for me, like dating and stuff like that, like I'm just like thinking of all these things that I can do to continue to implement that into being the confident, charismatic person that I want to be. So this is real stuff, super important, can work, like can impact your day-to-day life. And so even though it is public speaking, this is day-to-day life communication skills that
Yeah, we're
can
all
change
public
your life.
speakers.
So
Job interview, relationships, dating new people, meeting new people, and it applies to all of that. So yeah, hopefully there was something learned. I think if you truly listen to this, then you learned something new. I know I did. I learned something new, and now I have, exactly like you said, I have some ideas of things I can work on again, because I feel like I've neglected my public speaking skill, like my tools, I guess. Like I haven't kept them sharp the past year. I haven't really been doing it. I'm like, man, I need to sharpen some of these. Like I definitely need to sharpen my storytelling. Like
I'm
telling
super excited to go teach seminary tomorrow, because I'm like, I get to
cool,
go
yeah,
use these tools. Like I'm
and
excited.
practice it in a real setting, and that it's very exciting. And then it's a positive cycle, because once you practice and you see, oh, I did better, then you get confident, and when you're confident, you do better the next time, and it starts to spiral upward, which is great. So yeah, we love everybody who listens to this podcast and everybody who doesn't. But yeah, please share it. We appreciate Sam Merrill for being the man for sharing it and commenting. We really appreciate that. We appreciate people like Owen and Sage, these guys who have come on, and Jackson and Cameron. We love having people on. We love doing it one-on-one too, but yeah, definitely reach out to us if you want to be on it. DM us. We can get you hooked up. Just carve out some time and we will send you the Zoom link and we will get things rolling. But anyways, yeah, go subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Music. We're trying to figure out that Apple Podcast. Episode 24 is not up on Apple Podcast, but it is on Spotify. So go check it out there. But yeah, we appreciate everybody and we love y'all.
Love you. Bye.